Alright, hello everyone. My name is Wesley, this is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a recipe that came out on my YouTube channel a couple of months ago, I think. That's essentially what we're going to do is make a fish taco, but we're going to glaze it in some miso paste, which I forgot to take out, and a couple of other things, which is going to be super interesting. Today I actually don't have any miso paste, so we're going to do it with something that is very, very similar to miso paste, which is going to be some Korean doenjang, which, if you're not familiar, is essentially the same thing but comes from Korean food. Doenjang is basically unspiced gochujang. It has a very, very similar palate, obviously not from Japan though. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we can run through everything that I know about how I assembled this recipe. If you're interested, all of these recipes, as always, anytime we're streaming, they always live over on my YouTube channel. So if you're looking for that stuff, or if you're trying to cook the things that we're cooking, definitely head over there. Check out what's going on. Lots of fun, cool things coming out over there. Those are out every Friday, so many, many Fridays ago we came out with this particular recipe. So cool, so that's that. As always, the YouTube channel is at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on Reddit. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel that you're already on. Good job, you did it. I'm starting off, anyway, with the first two elements that you'll see me start off with in a lot of recipes. This is 4 cloves of crushed and then minced garlic, which we're smashing real good, and then we're going to give this a rough chop. Very, very often, when you see me garlic, I will pretty much just stop at this point, basically. We're going to crush it and then run our knife through it, like so. And we pretty much just stop here, which is generally okay if you're wok frying your garlic. It's not going to make a huge difference if you don't have a perfect mince, because the garlic is already going to basically just start falling apart in the wok fry anyway, so it's not going to be a huge deal. With our particular use for it today, though, what we're going to do is we're going to be tossing this into our glaze itself. That means that when we toss it into the glaze, it is actually not going to get cooked, so it will never actually hit a wok and never actually get cooked. Is that we need to be a little bit more particular about how we cook and chop the garlic, because we're essentially going to be eating that raw. So for our particular use today, and not always, but just at least for today, we are actually going to go through and mince this stuff. I'm actually going to peel this too. Unlike the garlic, however, the ginger, it does need to be fine minced no matter what. So we're going to start with what is essentially, I guess, like a dice. I guess you call that a dice. Like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to combine all of this together and we're going to give it a mince. You can also, by the way, if you're super lazy or if you don't feel like doing this yourself, you can put this through a microplane, or if you just don't like doing knife work, it's a good solution too. Do it. So this is our garlic and ginger. We're going to be tossing that into our glaze in a minute, actually we might as well just do that now. Alright, so that's our garlic and ginger. Next up, let's dive into our glaze. Next up, we're going to get to our glaze here, and this is essentially what we're going to be brushing down our salmon pieces with. Here it is. I have a couple of preferences about how I assemble this glaze. The most important part is the miso paste, but the next most important part, in my opinion at least, is the presence of a lot of sugar. So what we're doing, that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, and then next is, this is a single tablespoon of mirin. Mirin is a Japanese rice wine. It is also very sweet, so we're going to get a lot of nice sugars from that. Next is 2 tablespoons of sesame oil. That's just going to help things sort of loosen up and be a little bit more oily for us as we brush down. And then finally, this is going to be 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. All right. So we're going to mix this up together. Did I skip something? Yes, we did skip the miso paste. All right, so the last element is going to be, this is going to be 1 tablespoon of what should be miso paste. Today we're using, again, doenjang, which is the Korean equivalent. What's most important, either way, whatever it is that you do choose to use, is that both doenjang and miso paste, it's going to be very clumpy, like you see here. We have this big old clump of miso paste going on. We don't want that. That's real bad. It's not going to work in a glaze if we leave that like it is. So what we want to do is essentially whisk this together so we don't have a big old clump of miso paste glaze, because that's not going to work otherwise. You can also use a whisk here, but mainly what we're looking for is a relatively smooth and like pretty thick. That's really what we're going to look for here. Yeah. Where's my paste brush? Actually, I have no idea where the pastry brush is. Nope, it's not in here. To use a shittier pastry brush. Right. Cool, so that's our glaze. We're gonna set this aside for a minute and then take a look at our salmon, which I actually have not looked at. Today what we're gonna be using is some Atlantic salmon. What I love most about this particular cut of salmon that we're using, at least the one that I get from this grocery store, is that it still has its skin attached, which I love about this, because the skin is going to be really, really useful in kind of retaining moisture and generally just like achieving a nice crispy quality to our salmon. So what we're going to do, lots of people like to remove this skin because they feel like it's too fishy or it just kind of looks weird, I guess. I am a particular proponent of saving that skin. It's really, really useful because it's going to be a big part of how we get a nice crispy piece of salmon. First thing I'm doing though is I'm going to slice this into, this is going to be into 4ths. Mostly because that's what size we need it to be in when it heads into our wok fry. Then what we're going to do is we're going to brush this down with our glaze, but most importantly, we do not want to glaze this skin side because this is the side that we're going to fry. So that skin side, if it has any glaze on it, what's going to happen is it's just going to start burning because our glaze contains so much sugar. So if you pan fry sugar, as you can imagine, once it starts frying, that pan fry is basically just going to start burning sugar, and then you're not going to have a very attractive looking glaze going on. So very important when we glaze our salmon today, we want to just glaze the top side, the flesh side, because we're actually not going to sear this side. This is just the side that's going to be facing up when we pop it in the oven. So here's our glaze. And what we're going to do is we're going to be glazing this in 3 separate occasions. The first is right now. The second is going to be halfway through our bake, and the third is going to be at the very, very end, basically on top of the taco. This is a pretty thin glaze, or a thin layer of glaze that we're adding here, but keep in mind that we're actually going to glaze this another 2 times too. And again, I don't like this pastry brush, but here we are. The main reason, by the way, that I don't like this pastry brush, it's really hard to wash. This is basically just a paintbrush. And if you've ever tried to wash a paintbrush, it does not wash very well. So, but I don't know where my pastry brush is. I think it's in the kitchen somewhere. All right, so that's our first glaze. Then before we do anything else, we're gonna head over to the stove and fry these up. So over on the stove, I've got my wok. We're gonna get this heating up. What I love doing with this particular salmon cut is we're gonna do a shallow fry in a round bottom wok. And shallow fries work really, really well in round bottom woks because of the way that it's shaped. So our wok, you'll notice, has this nice curvature here at the center. What's going to happen is that when we put that oil into the wok, that oil is going to pull up at that center bit. So if you were to do that something similar, say like a cast iron skillet or maybe a stainless steel skillet, what would happen is it would spread out nice and flat because you have this big flat surface. But this round bottom beat is very, very nice because it helps us pull up a little bit more oil with less oil. So we can achieve the same results without using as much oil, which is nice and cost saving for us. Cool. So what I'm gonna do today is we're gonna pan fry this real briefly for about, I think, like 3 minutes is what we're going for. What we're really looking for is a nice crisped up quality to the skin side of our salmon, and then we're gonna remove it, throw it onto an oven rack, and then bake it for an additional 10 minutes. All right. But as always, anytime that we're wok frying, we want to make sure that that wok is ripping hot before we start cooking. Otherwise, you will end up with a very, very mushy stir fry. Never good. So here's our oil. This is going to seem like a lot of oil, but in retrospect, not actually that much. And here we go. So we're gonna let that sear. I like to go for about 3 minutes on a home range. Generally speaking, when we're wok cooking, a little bit longer than they normally would on, say, a wok burner or a commercial range, because they don't have quite as much heat retention, so we're not heating the wok that's hot. So usually I look for about 2.5 minutes. If I'm on a wok burner, that's closer to 1.5 minutes. But most importantly, the most important part about any sear is that we want to let that piece of salmon, or whatever it is that you're searing, so salmon or chicken or whatever that might be, it has to stay undisturbed. If you start shuffling that piece of salmon around, you're going to ruin that sear, and then you won't have a crispy bottom. You'll have a kind of like mediocre cook. So very important. Don't touch it. Fussing around with it. It'll work, I promise. Cool. Let's see. So again, salmon also very delicate, so we want to be careful not to overcook the salmon. If you've ever had overcooked salmon, it is truly the worst thing that you can do to a piece of salmon because it becomes very, very chewy. So like you can overshoot on chicken and it will probably be okay. Because chicken is resilient and it won't get too rubbery when it overcooks. Salmon is very delicate. If you start overcooking it, as soon as it overcooks, you're in a bad space, so you don't want that to happen at all. To that end, we're actually not going to do very much cooking here. Mostly what we're doing is just crisping up the bottom skin side of our salmon. We're not actually trying to cook it all the way through. Remember that salmon can be eaten raw too, it's essentially sashimi. So we're totally okay with undercooking. We can also undershoot it too, that's also fine. Our main goal here is to just achieve a crispy bottom to it, and then flip it over, give it a very brief cook on that other side, and then remove it. And then the remainder of our cook is going to happen in our oven. So there's our first flip. What we're going to do is let that go for maybe 30 seconds or so. I like to let that second side have a little bit of time. Remember that that second side also has a glaze on it, so we can't do any extensive amounts of searing here on that second side, because if we let it go for too long on that second side, we're going to end up with burnt sugar, which is never good. All right. I forget to do this every time we do this recipe too, but if you want to try and make sure that your skin doesn't separate or like pop off of the piece of salmon, also very useful to remember to score the skin, so give it a couple of slits, and that way when you start frying, what's going to happen is that skin is going to contract, and as it contracts, you're going to have that skin sort of like start popping off, and then it sort of like curls at the edges. I forgot to do that. I consistently forget to do that every time I do this recipe, but if you're not forgetful like me, definitely do that. Cool, so here's our second piece of salmon into the wok. Just like our first piece, we're going to let that go. That's going to be another maybe a little under 2 minutes. Our first piece was a little over, which I'd like to dial back. But once again, just like our first piece, what we're mainly looking for here is developing that nice crisp up bottom end. And that's going to be real tasty for us. In my opinion, the tastiest part of a piece of salmon is that bottom crispy edge. So, like I mentioned earlier, lots of people, they like to remove that skin side. I think because it's like a little bit fishy, or maybe just because it looks gross. But honestly, I think it's the best part of the salmon. Really pulling out the best part. Don't do that. Yeah. Cool. This, by the way, also a good time to remember not to overfill your wok. If you add too many things to a shallow fry like what we're doing right now, it will truly ruin the fry and you won't get anything out of it. You'll mostly just get mediocre browning, which is not fun. Cool. Alright, so there's our second side. Once again, I'm not going to let it go for too long on that second side. Just giving a little bit of an opportunity to sort of open up the aromatics that are on our garlic and ginger. Will this fit both pieces? Let's find out. Yeah, that'll fit. Alright, there's our last two pieces. We're going to let that go for another 2 minutes. Cool. Alright, hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in to one of these streams, we're here every Tuesday at 6:30 PST. Today we're doing a recipe that came out on my YouTube channel. Every Friday we have a new recipe that comes out. Usually we cook the recipes that we're live streaming. But today, last Friday, we came out with a recipe for a slow braised pork belly called a fan, which is a Chinese braised pork belly, which you cannot do on a live stream because it would take 4 hours. So that would be a much too long stream. So instead, we're going to repeat one of my favorite recipes, which is a miso salmon taco, or a crispy glazed miso glazed taco with fish or a salmon. Which is one of my favorite recipes that we've come out with in a while. This one, by the way, is part of a whole larger series that we're doing that's dedicated to Asian fusion and like Chinese fusion, doing interesting things with things that come out of Asian cuisine that are generally unexpected. So this particular one, we're taking some miso paste and throwing it in a bunch of tacos, which I think is really interesting, delicious. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely head over to the YouTube channel and check out that stuff. Those recipes are out every Friday, so this Friday coming up, we have a recipe for sundubu, which is a Korean, spicy Korean soft tofu stew, which is real tasty. That's coming out Friday, I think. Probably tongs would be smart. That's alright though. Cool, so one more time we're going to give that a real brief flash fry on the second side. That's maybe like 10 seconds or so. And then once again we're going to take a look here so we can have a look at our finished salmon. camera is on. There we go. And we're going to do our second glaze here, so remember we're going to be glazing this 3 separate times. So here's our second 3 glazes. Remember that the reason that we're going so thin on our glaze here is because we're going to be glazing it so many times that we don't want to overdo it on the first glaze, because it will just start burning. We don't want to burn the sugars in our glaze here. Alright, so that's our second glaze. We're going to pop this into the oven. I have 400 degrees on my oven here, and then we're going to let that go for 10 minutes. Alright, so last up before we dump everything out in our wok, very, very important. When you have reserved fryer oil like we just have in our wok just now, that should down your drain. You really don't want to dump excess fryer oil down your drain. I've seen lots of people on the internet do that. That's a real bad idea, because essentially what's going to happen is that if you've ever noticed that when fryer oil cools down, what happens is it cools down into a solid. So it's if you let that cool down into a solid in your drain, what's going to happen is it's going to cool down into a solid into your drain, which is going to clog the pipes real bad. So you don't want that to happen. So never, ever, ever dump fryer oil down your drain, because you're going to have to call the plumber later. All right. Cool, so that's it for our wok fry, I believe. Meanwhile, so we have 10 minutes in the oven. We're going to get started on our slaw next. What we're doing here, so this is, by the way, a Taiwanese cabbage. Taiwanese, you don't have to use Taiwanese. Honestly, you can use any kind of cabbage you want. The point I did this Napa cabbage. I particularly love using Taiwanese cabbage, mostly because it's the one that I can most readily find in Chinatown. But also I particularly love eating Taiwanese cabbage when we're eating it raw, because it has more of a sweeter taste and a little bit less bitterness than you generally find with a lot of cabbages that you come across, especially like Napa cabbage, stuff like that. Alright. So here's our cabbage head. This is going to be, I think, a little bit less than 1/4 of a head. I'm starting off, that was the core of our cabbage head. I want to chop this. Let's go this way. So we're going to do a quick brine on our quick pickle on our cabbage here, which is essentially we're going to throw it and toss it in a little bit of vinegar with some sugar and salt, and that's going to give us this nice, real nice slaw. So that's maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of a head. We're going to go pretty light here because I always have extra cabbage left over. Also, there's some errant pieces of core going on here, which I don't like. Next up, this is a single red shallot. I usually like to use 2 or 3 red shallots for this particular recipe, but I forgot to buy more shallots and I thought I had more, so here we are. Yeah, good. The way you can also substitute it out. My favorite sub has always been a little bit of red onion, so you can swap that out for red onion. And it will be close. It's not the same thing, but it'll get you something similar. Shallot is a little bit more concentrated. Right. There's our shallot. Next up, this is going to be this amount of cilantro. I think in the original recipe I called for something like a whole cup of cilantro. Today we're going to rough estimate our cilantro because this is what I have left over from whatever the last thing that I cooked with it was. I forget what that was. But as you can see, so I've had my cilantro stored in some water, and you can see partly the reason that I don't like doing that unless I have to. So it starts wilting a little bit faster, or at least the leaves that are submerged start wilting a little bit faster, and that's why we have this this like slimy bottom end here, which I don't love. Alright, then what we're going to do here is I'm going to take a fork. Lots of people ask me about this trick. It's not really a trick as much as it is a shortcut. And then we're going to take a fork and pick through our stems, which not 100% perfect, but it does help you remove a lot of leaves from a lot of the stem. So once again, it's not perfect. You do end up throwing a lot of cilantro away. But in this particular case, I think it's fine because most of this is going into the trash anyway because it's about to spoil. So you'll also notice that we do still have some stems behind. So usually when I do this trick, we still have to go back and pick out some of these stems too, which is also, again, not the most perfect hack. Although it does also beat the pants off of doing this one leaf at a time, which I used to do, and it would take forever. All right. Alright, so that's our cilantro. What we're going to do is, and this is true for any time that you're cutting a leafy aromatic like cilantro, but also basil, rosemary, any of those veggies, any of those spices that are really, really leafy. What you don't want to do is just start running your knife through cilantro or anything else stuff like that, because what will happen is that the knife is not going to cut all the way through it because it is way, way too thin in order for it to pierce the cilantro. So what we're doing is we're bunching this up and then rolling it into a nice ball like so, and then running our knife through it, which gives us a little bit more surface area for our knife to work with. So we have this nice cilantro to work with. A little bit less difficult to work around. Yeah. Crystal, you chop them with the stems on. Yeah, you could absolutely do that too. Yeah, actually lots of people ask me what I do with the stems, so you can also eat this stuff. Usually what I'll do is I throw this into a freezer bag, and then I toss that into a stock pot for stock later on. Also very useful. You can also eat it, but I find that it gets a little bit chewy, so I like to omit it, but totally to your own discretion, I guess. Alright, next up, so this is going to be the vinegars in our vinegar slaw. First up is 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. Followed by, this is going to be 2 tablespoons of red vinegar, which is a Chinese vinegar that I love using. You can also, if you can't find red vinegar though, because I know it is a little bit tricky to find, you can use red wine vinegar will also work just as well too. It's essentially the same thing. Is there sugar in this? It's not. I just sworn I threw sugar in this, but I guess not. Last up, this is a couple pinches of kosher salt, and that's just going to help start releasing some of that water for us in our cabbage here. could have sworn there was sugar in this, but I guess not. So that's our slaw. This is also, by the way, as it kind of sits here, once that sugar or salt is sort of incorporated, it's going to start releasing a lot more moisture. So we're going to set this aside for about 5 minutes as we work on our salmon that's about to be done. In those 5 minutes, we're going to see a lot more moisture sort of pull out from that cabbage, from that salt that we added, which is very useful. All right, and right on time. Perfect. Let's see. So here's our salmon. We've had it in the oven, 400 degrees for this was about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less than 10 minutes actually, because I think I pulled it early. Ooh. Then very important, what we don't want to do is start diving into this. It was super important because it's very tempting to do so. But what we want to do is let this rest for a good 5 minutes before we dive in, because if you cut into anything that's very fresh out of the oven or out of the pan, you never want to cut into it immediately, because what's going to happen is if you cut into it right away, it's just going to start releasing a lot of juice, and then you're going to have all of the juice kind of left behind on your cutting board, which is not good. We want that to be in our mouths. So I'm going to set this aside. This will go somewhere. We're running out of space in the kitchen. But we're going to set it aside for about 5 minutes before we dive in. You just started making stock, yeah. Fresh made stock, by the way, is the real secret sauce to a lot of things. Not just Chinese food or even like Asian food in general, but like so many things. If you're using powdered stock, the first time that you use fresh stock is going to be game changing, because it's just going to like make everything that you cook a little bit better. And by the way, my favorite hack to it is essentially so I just mentioned this earlier with the cilantro, but essentially what I do is there's a freezer bag in my freezer, and every time that I have a scrap, like the cilantro stems or a carrot shavings or the edges and like roots of onions, stuff like that, it all goes into one bag, and then I freeze it, and then when I have that full bag full of scraps, we toss that into a stock pot, throw a couple of bones in there, so I have some actually don't know what part of the cow it comes from, but it's the bones that it comes from the butcher where I buy my meat. You can just go to your butcher and say, hey, I'm looking for some bones if you have any left behind. Lots of times people grab that for their dogs and stuff. Usually they might charge you something very, very minimal, maybe like $5 for a couple pounds worth of bones. Lots of times generally you might get it even for free because it's the stuff they're about to throw away. And then you throw that into a stock pot and boil it for 6 to 8 hours, and you got some real great stock. Yeah, I'd like to take credit for that, but I actually learned that from a friend of mine who works in food waste, and it's one of my favorite hacks. Cool. What was I about to do? Oh yeah. Meanwhile, we're gonna circle back over to the stove. Wow, the camera looks really crooked without the wok there. But what's going on here on the stove, I've got my burner. And this, by the way, only works if you have a gas range. So if you don't have a gas range, this doesn't work for you, and I'm sorry. But you can do something very similar just with a and then what we're going to do is reheat our tortillas right onto the range. So this is very useful because the open and direct flame on the tortilla is going to kind of like loosen up a lot of the starches in the tortilla, which is real nice. So we're not actually cooking anything. Remember that the tortilla is already cooked, so we don't need to do very much. But the open flame is going to help kind of like loosen up that tortilla so that when we fold it in half, it doesn't break in half. So this is like my favorite way. If you don't have the ability to go out and get fresh tortillas, which I wish I did, but the nearest Mexican grocery store is really far away. So it's like 5-6 miles away, so I'm not walking there. So if you have old tortillas like I do, real useful hack, throw it onto the burner and get that loosened up a little bit. If you don't have a gas range, by the way, though, if you're working on like an induction top or a coil range, this does not, obviously don't try and throw this onto your induction top range because it will probably just stick to your induction top and you're going to ruin your range. But if you don't have any of those things, what you can do is just do it in a little non-stick skillet, something very similar, something with very, very gentle heat, and you'll achieve something kind of similar. What will happen though is you won't get these nice like curled up edges that we have going on here. So you see it's like browning right here. All of that coming from the direct heat. Well, I guess you can kind of see it. It's definitely blowing out on YouTube. There we are though. Yeah, definitely blowing out on YouTube. I think you can see it on Reddit though. Ooh, your grocery store makes fresh tortillas in Texas. That's very fortunate of you. Yeah, so there is a Mexican grocery store in Oakland, but it's really far away. It's on like the other side of the city, so it's like 6-7 miles away from me. So I have to make a dedicated trip to go pick up fresh tortillas. So I did buy masa at one point in a overzealous thought that I might start making my own tortillas all the time, but I never got around to it. All right. All right, so that's it for this. Turning this camera on. Yeah. All right, so last up, what we're gonna do is get back to our salmon here. Is it cold enough? It is cold enough. So here's our finished salmon, nice and cooled down here. So again, very important, as soon as this comes out of the oven, you're going to want to cut into it because it looks really tasty and you want to start eating. Very important, do not cut into that salmon right out of the oven because it will absolutely shed all of its juices and then you're going to have yourself a very dry piece of salmon, which is not what we're after. Once again, though, also this is not just true for salmon, but just in general, make sure that your knives are sharp. But super important for this particular cut of salmon is that your knife has to be sharp here. So if your knife is not sharp, when you go and start like cutting into it, what's going to happen is the knife is just going to mush down into the salmon, and it's going to kind of crush the integrity of the salmon, and then you're not gonna get a cut. You're basically just going to smash it, and that's really important because if you smash a piece of salmon, it just sort of like crumbles into pieces, which we're trying to retain. We're trying to hold that size, like that shape of the salmon. Otherwise, we're going to have like broken pieces of salmon. So without pushing down too hard, so this is also like a knife technique thing, but we don't want to push down like this. We're not trying to chop like this. We're mostly just using the edge of the knife to let the knife do the work. So we're going to slice like so. And this again, similar technique that we use for things like say like mushrooms or anything that's real delicate, where we don't want to slice all the way through using the knife itself. All right. Here's the right plate. Ooh, yeah, that's really good. All right, so here's our salmon tacos. I'm gonna make like 4 or 5 of these, but I'm not gonna do it right now because I feel like eating it. Then what we're gonna do is here's our cilantro and vinegar slaw. Followed finally by a couple of tablespoons. This is our glaze, which we're going to add in a couple of spoonfuls. That's a nice addition. Where's my lime? There it is. And then last up, here's some lime wedges, which we're going to slice up. And by the way, very useful for presentation. If you've ever have been trying to figure out how to properly plate a taco and get it to stand up properly, lime wedge is going to save your life, like so. All right, so the last thing that we would normally be doing is using a little bit of avocado, which you can see I have here. I cut into this today, and it was just shy of being ripe. Like, I mean, like it was probably like 6 hours shy of being ripe, and now it's rock hard. So I forgot. I'm not gonna do any lime because we're not gonna do any avocado because the avocado is not ripe. It's kind of like hard as a brick. So, but that's the dangers of buying avocado season, though. Yeah. Ooh, refrigerated. Yeah, cook-at-home tortillas are really good too. Yeah, that's so essentially like batter. It's like raw tortillas. And by the way, tortillas are really easy to make too. It's basically just masa plus water, and then you smash it into a tortilla shape, and then you just throw it on a pan. Really, really quick, and really quick and easy. Also a really, really simple solution for really, really fresh tortillas. That's a good idea, though. I don't think I've ever come across that, though. That sounds really good. Cool. All right. Cool. So I think that did everyone. Well, this is like the fastest stream that we've done in a while. I think that's it, everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Glad everyone had a chance to tune in during the holidays. Weird, muggy Tuesday evening in California. So thanks you all for tuning in. We're working our way, by the way, up to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the month, which is really exciting because that means because we started the channel earlier this year, that means that we're working our way up to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year, like total. So 6,000 subscribers total, which is really exciting. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over, give this subscribe only if you're interested. Lots of fun stuff coming out every Friday, though. So we've got the new recipes. Those are coming out every Friday, by the way. The new music, those come out every Wednesday. So if you're looking for the beats that go under my voiceover, lots of people ask about that stuff. Those are out every Wednesday. They're called Woo Cook's Beats. There's a 1-minute version that comes out on the YouTube channel, and then there's the rest of it out on the Woo Cook's Beats YouTube channel. And then every Monday is the short recipes. So those are the ones that if you follow this channel on gift recipes, those short recipes are out on the YouTube channel every Monday. So more reliably. Lots of times I forget to post things on the gift recipe subreddit. So if you want to find that stuff more reliably, every Monday it's out. And I think one of them came out yesterday. Yeah, it is. It's Tuesday, so it came out yesterday. So all that stuff lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested, hop over there, check out what's going on. Yeah. RKK6, how's it going? Yeah. Hello. Wow, they still have that stuff at Walmart? I have to go find that. There is actually the Walmart in Oakland closed down. I think it closed down during COVID, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but it's gone though. So that means that the nearest Walmart to me is, I have no idea. I don't even know where the nearest Walmart is. It might be in like Santa Rosa. It might be like 40, 50 miles away from me. So that the closure of that Walmart was a real bummer because I used to go there and buy stuff a lot. So kind of sucks. But yeah, cool. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday doing Oh, we're doing sundubu jjigae. So, by the way, so every Friday we have a new recipe out. So this Friday coming up in a couple of days, we're coming out with a sundubu jjigae, which is a Korean stew. It's sort of like a soft tofu stew that we do with kimchi and a little bit of gochugaru, which is the stuff that you use to make kimchi. So it looks really, really spicy. It's like bright red. Because it looks like it has a lot of spice in it. But the thing that's making it bright red is actually the gochugaru, which is relatively mild in heat, not like gochujang, which is a little bit more heat intense. But gochugaru is basically just chili powder, so it's not actually that spicy. It just looks really spicy. So one of my favorite stews, especially like cold weather stews. So that's coming out this Friday, which means the Tuesday next week we're going to be cooking through that live and take a look at how I like to approach that particular recipe, because there's a couple of things that you need very specific cookware to do. You need a dolsat pot, which is like a stone bowl, and I don't have a dolsat bowl, which means that there's a couple of ways that you can work around that. I do it in a wok with a little bit of like work around to kind of get the eggs to set. So stuff like that all coming up. So thanks so much for tuning in. Oh yeah, frozen, cook at home tortillas. Yeah, that's like, super expensive tortillas that should not be that expensive, because tortillas are not like, there's nothing complicated or like fascinating about how tortillas are made. It's just like masa plus water, plus you smash it into a shape. So there's like, it should not be that expensive because it's not that hard to make either. So the hardest part is the skill and technique of making it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about tortillas. But yeah, I kind of just been sitting on stale tortillas for a while because I'm lazy and I don't feel like driving all the way to Cardenas, which is like 6 miles away. So. Cool, yeah, definitely watch the replay. Yeah, thanks, man. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday doing sundubu jjigae. As always, hop over to the YouTube, check out what's going on over there. That's working our way up to 6,000 subs by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit our goal, please hop over and subscribe. I'm gonna spin the beats after I shut off the stream. So if you want to find the beats, tune in and listen. All right, bye everyone. Tastes like strawberries on a summer evening, and it sounds just like a song. I want more berries and that summer feeling. It's so wonderful and warm. Breathe me in, breathe me out. I don't know if I could ever go without. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know if I could ever go without watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar. Strawberries on a summer evening. Baby, you're the end of June. I want your belly and that summer feeling, getting washed away in you. Breathe me in, breathe me out. I don't know if I could ever go without watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar
found for you, she really helped. Now you can be a better man for your brand new girl.
Smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover. Don't pop like trouble, breaking into your heart like that. Cool shade stunner, yeah, owe it all to my mother. Hot like summer, yeah, I'm making you sweat like that. Ooh, when I look in the mirror, I'm not too hard to do. I got the superstar glow, so ooh, do the boogie line. Step right left to my beat.
Was enough and it was all in vain. Time starts to pass before you know it, you're frozen. Ooh. But something happened for the very first time with you. My heart melted to the ground, found something true, and everyone's looking round thinking I'm going crazy. But